My life's kinda been like a whirlwind tour of the world's kitchen, only with more passport stamps and less sanity. Name's Kira, fresh into the 3rd decade of my ride on this rock, and I've made a living out of breathing in the spices and dishing out the experience through my vlog. So it was just another steamy day in Thailand, with me elbow deep in noodles and peanuts, learning the ropes of an insane pad thai from this little old dude who could have been Yoda's culinary cousin. That's when this tall drink of water, Mark, stumbled into my life, literally. He tripped over a foldable chair trying to get a better look at the pan and nearly ended our romance before it started by nearly sending me headfirst into my own sizzle. "Whoa, sorry about that," he chuckled, hauling the chair out of the disaster zone. "Just trying to see how the magic happens." "You could say it's all in the wrist action," I said, giving the noodles a flamboyant toss. "Careful there, wouldn't want to add roadkill tourist to today's menu." Mark laughed, all easy charm and crinkly-eyed smiles. "Mark," he said, extending a hand once he was sure it was safe. "Kira, the noodle whisperer," I replied, giving his hand a quick shake before diving back into my culinary ballet. And there it was. We clicked quicker than a camera shutter. He was from the States, here to escape the office walls and spreadsheets, which, to me, sounded like a jailbreak from Adulting 101. We spent the week flitting between street food stalls and ancient temples, with him filming the chaos and me explaining the dance between tangy, sweet, spicy, and umami. When the week ended, we swapped digits. Said our "see you laters" 'cause goodbyes were for people who had less faith in cheap international texting plans. Months sped past like high-speed train rides, nights spent spilling our thoughts via texts that turned into calls that turned into video chats. Then one day, he just showed up at my doorstep with a ring and a question. We tied the knot 6 months later. Yeah, just like that. Bam. Married. Things took a nosedive after a while. Forget the lovey-dovey honeymoon phase, it was like we'd skipped straight to bickering old couple mode. I'd be coming home from some corner of the world, my brain still buzzing with the new flavors and faces I'd met, and all Mark could do was hassle me about not being normal. "You know what a normal wife does, Kira?" That's how he'd start, every single time. "She cooks, she cleans, she doesn't jet off every other week." Sitting there at the kitchen table, I'd toss my stuff down and give him a look. "Seriously, Mark? You think I just flit around for kicks? This is work. My work." To him, it was like my job was make-believe. "Work? You think filming some street food and yapping about it online is work? Get real. Get a proper job." Each word stung. "It pays, doesn't it?" I'd shoot back. But that was never enough. Once, I was up against a deadline, videos needed cutting, articles needed writing, and guess what? Mark barged into the office and dropped a bomb. "The house is a mess, Kira. When you gonna clean up?" I couldn't believe my ears. "You've got hands, Mark. Use 'em." Defying him only cranked his gears worse. "What, and let you loaf around editing videos all day? Is that what you call pulling your weight?" Freeloader. That's what he called me. In our own home. "I'm out there busting my tail to bring home the bacon," I told him, standing my ground. "And this freeloader you're talking to just paid off the last of your student loans with her hobby." But it was like talking to a brick wall. All he saw was a wife who wasn't fitting his mold, who wasn't, I don't know, June Cleaver or somebody. And the worst part? Instead of getting it through his thick skull that we were partners in this, he doubled down. "Why don't you make something of yourself, huh?" He'd sneer. "Get a job with a desk, something steady." "I am making something of myself," I shouted, slammed my laptop shut so hard I'm surprised it didn't break. "You think it's not a real job because I'm not miserable like you?" Normal was his favorite word. Bite to eat, 9 to 5, white picket fence, the whole boring shebang. Drove me nuts. But as for me, I wasn't about to let go of my passport or my dreams, no matter what he thought a wife should be. Beatrice, Mark's mom and my mother-in-law, was the kind of person whose idea of a surprise visit was her showing up in your living room ranting about something you did or didn't do. Living just a couple of streets away, she considered our house part of her daily walking route, which basically meant she'd drop by whenever she felt like it. So there I was one Tuesday, laptop open, trying to get some work done on my latest travel vlog. You could almost set your watch by Beatrice. Sure enough, like clockwork, the front door swings open, it's never locked for Beatrice, and there she was. "Working on your little videos again, huh?" Her voice dripped with disdain. She didn't even say hello. I sighed, trying not to look as interrupted as I felt. "Hey, Beatrice. Yeah, gotta keep on top of it." She tossed her oversized purse onto the couch and made herself comfortable. "You know, when I was your age, I was raising kids, keeping a spick-and-span house. Didn't have time for hobbies." Her words plucked at my already frayed nerves. "It's not a hobby, Beatrice. This is my job." Beatrice snorted as she peered over her glasses, which she only wore to make a point. "Call it what you want. When's the last time you cooked your husband a proper dinner? Or are you too busy working on these little trip films?" I bristled. She knew how to hit where it hurt. "Mark eats just fine. I don't hear him complaining." "Oh, he complains, all right. Just not to you." She smirked and picked at a non-existent speck of dust on her trousers. I wanted to scream. Instead, I shut my laptop, a little too hard, and stood up. "I'm right here, Beatrice. And I'm working. Bringing in money. Isn't that important too?" She huffed, getting up. "Well, if you won't listen to me, maybe you'll listen to the pastor. We're having dinner tonight, and he'll set you straight." I was dumbfounded. "Dinner? Tonight? Beatrice, I have deadlines." "Not anymore. You can put off your deadlines to save your marriage. I've seen the signs, Kira. It's now or never." Fuming, I barely managed to keep a civil tone. "Fine. But this is our life, not just mine or Mark's. Don't you forget that." Beatrice smirked, triumphant. "We'll see," she said, and plucked her purse up again. 6 o'clock. And wear something nice for a change. After the door clicked shut, the silence thudded in my ears like the after-ringing of a bell. So much for a quiet workday at home. Now I had to deal with a dinner ambush and a pastor mediating my marriage? Great, just great. Cooking had always been my kind of therapy, mixing flavors like I mixed colors on a canvas. But here came Beatrice, marching into my sanctuary like she owned the place, ready to burn it down with a single glance. That Thursday, I was in the zone, chopping vegetables for a stir-fry, another recipe I'd picked up from my travels. The door flew open and Beatrice waltzed in, all frowns and scowls. "What's that smell?" was the greeting I got. No hello, as usual. I kept the irritation out of my voice, doing my best to stay polite. "Stir-fry. It's a recipe from Thailand," I replied, hoping she'd just sit down and maybe, just maybe, keep her opinions to herself for once. But no dice. "Can't you make anything normal? Real food?" Beatrice scoffed, planting her hands on her hips. I could feel the anger bunched up at the base of my throat, but I swallowed it down, trying to preserve some peace. "I just thought we'd try something new," I said. Mark poked at the food with a fork like he was testing if a piece of roadkill was ready to be scraped off the pavement. "New? I've seen better-looking garbage." "You tell her, Mark," Beatrice egged him on, her arms crossed over her chest. "Yeah, Kira, stick to what you know, which isn't much," he chuckled. His mom laughed along, slapping him playfully on the arm. I felt my cheeks burning up. This was too much, even for me. But before I could come up with anything to say, Beatrice grabbed the skillet from the stove. "Don't waste our time with this garbage," she hurled the contents of the skillet into the trash can. The room fell silent except for the hiss of leftover heat on the empty pan. I stood there, frozen, trying to wrap my head around the fact that the meal I had spent the last hour preparing was now mixed in with coffee grounds and eggshells. My effort to please, to do something different, felt foolish now. I looked at the trash, and I could feel every cruel word and snide remark they ever threw at me sticking to my skin. I couldn't even be mad anymore, it felt pointless. I started to clean up, my movements automatic. The kitchen felt colder now. I knew I should be angry, I should scream or cry or something to show them this wasn't okay. But instead, I just moved quietly, picking up the pieces of my failed attempt at dinner, at trying something, anything, to make this life I was living feel like it had a bit of me in it. The day had heated up more than the forecast said. It was Beatrice's birthday, and against my better judgment, I had gone and got her something special. Wrapped the gift myself, this mirror from Morocco, all hand-painted tiles and real craftsmanship. I thought she might appreciate something unique, something not from the department store clearance shelf. So what did you get her? Mark eyed me as he sprawled over the couch like some lazy cat. Something nice? I said, my hands tweaking the bow on the package, trying to smooth down my rising nerves. He chuckled. You're nice, and her nice ain't the same, Kira. We were in the dining room, this shrine to dark wood and silence, waiting for the queen herself to show up. I heard her before I saw her, that voice curdling the air. Mark, what's the hold-up? There's cake waiting. She swept in, her gaze fell on the gift, and she frowned. What's that? I handed over the package with a hopeful smile. Happy birthday, Beatrice. She looked at me like I was offering a dead rat. But she took it, shredded the paper, and held up the mirror. What in the world is this? I felt Mark's stare burning into my scalp. It's a mirror, handmade from Morocco. I thought it was beautiful, unique. Unique? She squawked, her face scrunching up. It's hideous. And before I could even blink, she slammed the thing onto the floor. Shattered glass skittered across the tiles like wicked ice. Mark didn't even flinch. Kira, what were you thinking? His voice was sharp enough to cut. I stared at the broken mirror, feeling something inside me splinter along with it. I'm sorry, I thought. She cut me off with a wave of her hand, turned to Mark. Tell your wife to stick to cash. Can't go wrong with money. I felt the shards of my patience giving away under my feet. I went to my purse, pulled out an envelope, last-minute insurance I knew I might need, and handed her 5 crisp $100 bills. Here, I said, trying to hide the trembling in my words. She snatched the cash hungrily. Well, that's more like it. Mark walked over, swept a piece of broken mirror with his shoe, looking at me like I was the mess he had to clean up. Next time, just ask me what to get her, he snapped. I dumped the shards into the bin, listening to them tinkle like a chandelier in a quake. A quieter, angrier part of me wished I could tell her exactly where she could stick her money, but instead, I quietly wrapped her cake slices, got through the day without another word. As the hours lurched by, the house filled with the laughter and chitter of guests, all of them ignoring the tense undercurrent that was me and them. I handed out drinks, laughed when expected, and played the part of the devoted wife and daughter-in-law. That evening I sat on the edge of the bathtub, staring at my reflection in the smaller, unbroken mirror there. If only I could buy something to fix what was broken inside, I thought. The silent room seemed to agree, and for a long time, it was the most understanding company I had. The wheels of my suitcase dragged a rhythmic clunking over the joints in the sidewalk as I walked up to my front door. I'd just gotten back from Greece. I was there for a shoot, for weeks of filming and a slice of freedom that I didn't know I was starving for until I tasted it. My keys seemed to jangle extra loud as I fitted them into the lock and swung the door open. What hit me wasn't the smell of the house or the stack of unopened mail. It was Beatrice, planted in the middle of the living room, bags piled at her feet like she'd just claimed a spot on the subway. I'm moving in, she declared, her voice brooking no argument. I felt my exhaustion evaporate into a tight ball of anxiety in my chest. What? Why? She eyed me like I was being thick on purpose. Rent's killing me, and since you're never around, it makes sense. I'll take the guest room. This was the worst kind of surprise, the kind that didn't bring any joy, just a heavy weight. I looked to Mark, seeking an ally, but his face was set in stone. Yeah, Kira, why the hell not? Makes sense to me, Mark said. I heard in his voice the finality of a door slamming shut. But, Mark, He cut me off with a sharp wave of his hand. Don't start. You've been freeloading off my space for years. The word stung, like rubbing alcohol on a fresh cut. That's when my hand dove into my bag, rummaging past the trinkets and memories of Greece until my fingers wrapped around the envelope, the one I kept tucked away for moments impossible to predict. I slapped the divorce papers on the coffee table between us. They seemed to hover for a second before landing, a soft sweep in the tense air. I want a divorce. For a moment, Mark just stared, and the only sound was Beatrice's slow inhale as if she was about to dive underwater. He picked up the papers, and I braced myself for yelling, for pleading, anything. But without saying a word, he scrawled his name across the bottom and tossed them back at me like they were a takeout menu he didn't want. Beatrice, her eyes gleaming like when she found $50 in a coat pocket, actually clapped. It's about time. I looked between the two of them, this pair that was supposed to be my family, and I felt nothing but the need to fill up my lungs. I didn't belong here, maybe I never did. With one last look at the shell of what used to be my life, I grabbed my suitcase. Where you going, Kira? Mark's voice was a dull blade, not cutting enough to hurt anymore. Anywhere but here. My voice came out steadier than I felt. There were no goodbyes, just the click of the door behind me, a soft punctuation mark on the end of a very long, very tiring sentence. It's strange how life can do a 180 when you're least expecting it. A few months since the divorce and life settled into a new kind of normal. My apartment might have been smaller than the house, but it was mine. I was in the middle of a tea brewing ritual that had become my new little evening piece when there was a knock at the door. I opened the door, and there they were, Mark and Beatrice. Like they'd just been out for a walk and decided to stop by. We saw your TV show, Mark said, shoving his hands into his pockets, a sheepish grin smeared across his face like a kid caught with his hand in the cookie jar. Beatrice just stood there, a forced smile stretching her lips tight. Yeah? I said, nursing my mug, not stepping aside to let them in. You watching TV together now? You're doing well, huh? Beatrice chimed in, peering over Mark's shoulder to get a look inside the apartment. I leaned against the door frame, taking a slow sip, feeling the heat of the tea and the situation. I suppose, I replied, the edge of a laugh bubbling beneath the surface. It wasn't just small talk they were after, I could smell it. These two never came without an agenda. Beatrice looked desperate, fidgeting with her purse strap, and Mark looked like he was about to try selling me a used car that was 2 steps away from the junkyard. They tried to butter me up with compliments, nodding at my tiny living room as if it was a palace, but I wasn't biting. Their tune changed rapidly when the buttering didn't work. Look, Kira. Mark's gaze darted around, avoiding mine. Things ain't been so great since you left. Financially, I mean. I raised an eyebrow. Is that right? And it's not just about money, Beatrice piped up. It's lonely. We miss you. I couldn't help it then, I laughed. It was dry and had the edge of years of bottled up frustrations behind it. You miss me? Well, that's a neat trick. Mark's face flushed a shade of guilt so vivid I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. We just thought, maybe we could start over. I leaned closer, making sure they could see the lack of sympathy in my eyes. You thought wrong. I've moved on, and this? I paused, gesturing to the space between us with my mug. This is me being happy, without the drama, without the mess. You two were the best bad decision I ever walked away from. Beatrice's mouth snapped shut, her face folding into a scowl. Mark just stood there like I'd slapped him across the face. They didn't say anything more, they didn't have to. As they turned away, their shoulders slumped, the door closed with a soft click and I was alone again, my heart pounding a victory march. I turned, pressing my back against the door, sliding down till I was sitting with the mug held loosely in my grip, my laughter ringing out, clear and loud in the empty apartment. Turning the tables never felt so good. My life's totally flipped since the show took off. People can't seem to get enough of me eating my way through the most out-of-way places and bringing back killer recipes. I guess it's true what they say, everyone loves a good comeback story, and mine's being served up nice and spicy. As I sat scrolling through my socials, watching the follower count tick up like it's got somewhere to be, my doorbell rings. Who could that be? I haven't ordered takeout. Lo and behold, there they were again, Mark dragging his feet and Beatrice trying to straighten out her scowl like she's walking into church. Kira, you gotta listen. Mark gets down on his knees right in my hallway like he's about to propose again, which is funny in a sad sort of way. I'll do anything. I'll even clean the house, cook your meals. I crossed my arms, trying not to let my smirk show. Really? You cooking? That'd be the day. And Beatrice, oh, she's got this look like she just ate something sour. Kira, the show's great and all, but family's family. I let out a little chuckle. Oh, I know about family all right. And mine just got a whole lot bigger, a couple million online. They blinked at me, not quite getting it, so I spelled it out. My followers, Mark. They're my family now. And they seem to appreciate me a whole lot more. Beatrice piped up again, with her hands fidgeting like she's trying to pull words out of the air. Kira, we just didn't realize. I cut her off with a little wave of my hand. Save it. I've heard enough. Did I ever tell you about that mirror from Morocco, Beatrice, the one I gave you for your birthday? They both looked at me, puzzled, like two kids who can't remember if they fed the dog. You broke it, threw it on the floor, I reminded her. Beatrice's face fell. Oh, that old thing? I nodded, casual-like. Worth thousands, that old thing. But you wouldn't know value if it bit you in the butt. I swear, you could almost see the cogs turning in their heads as they put two and two together, finally understanding the score. Mark found his feet again, stammering, but we didn't know. Kira, please. I raised a hand to stop him. I've always had money, even when you thought I was down and out. And now, my little TV venture's making sure I've got more than I know what to do with. Mark looked like he was about to pass out, and Beatrice, she was muttering under her breath, something about not knowing. I walked to the door, opened it wide, and stood there. Here's how it's going to be. You two will turn around, walk out of my life, and never come back. I don't need your drama, I've got my own show for that. They didn't move, just stood there gobsmacked. So, I made it real simple for them. Out. Now. And don't bother me again. I got recipes to try and places to see, and none of them include you. Shutting the door behind them, I felt the weight of the world lift off my shoulders. I went back to my kitchen, to my little empire of spices and sauces, to the future I was cooking up one dish at a time. I wasn't really mad, just done. Done with their begging, done with their games, done with anything that didn't smell like success. Or my next big meal. It felt good. No, it felt great. I glanced at my phone again, another 100 followers since I last checked. Yeah, I think I'll be alright. No need to look back when the future's this flavorful.